right, good afternoon. As it is 1 p.m., I will call this City Council workshop of March 10th, 2026 to order. This will be both a physical and virtual meeting. It may be viewed on YouTube and on Facebook following the meeting. Public comment is not normally taken at workshop meetings, although the council may allow or request public participation on action items. We have no action items on our workshop agenda today. Welcome to all of those in attendance. Up next, we have the county-wide planning policy update in advance of request for council action. And here to introduce that is our principal planner, Rajesh Kamak, to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, Kamak, principal planner. I have a short presentation for you about the countywide planning policies and the amendments. This is just to workshop the item and get council comments as we bring it forward for action at an April meeting. So to just go back and provide a little background, countywide planning policies are required by the GMA to provide mainly consistency between all jurisdictions that are planning in a county. So the countywide planning policies for Island County were adopted in March and they were ratified by the city in April. The process is every time the county does an amendment, it has to be ratified by Langley, Cookville, and Oak Harbor in order for those policies to take effect. So the policies were adopted in 2024. This round of amendment done in 2024 included the HAPT, the Housing for All planning tool, that included the housing for all income levels, and that's the document that assigned the 5,533 units to Oak Harbor's UGA. Knowing that this is a heavy lift for all jurisdictions, Department of Commerce provided grants. The city of Oak Harbor applied for grants and was successful in getting some, and the city applied it to hiring consultants to help with this comprehensive plan update. And so they went ahead. There are lands capacity analysis procedures in the countywide planning policies which the consultants followed, and these documents have been provided to the council. I'll just go over the numbers. The initial capacity analysis based on our current development standards is about 1,474 units. The state requires cities and jurisdictions to consider alternatives to see if you can change your development regulations to accommodate more. The city provided some options on that and then raised the capacity to 3,735 units, and still doesn't address the 5,533. So in discussions with the county, it was determined that there is a lot of challenges in the UGA. We have developed and undeveloped land in the UGA, and so it makes it really challenging to try and plan for capacity in the already developed areas because of the infrastructure that's there right now and the infrastructure that would be needed if you were to plan for development. And so all of those challenges could not be done with this update, and so the balance of 1541 is what this amendment is trying to deal with, because it couldn't be accommodated in the UGA. So in the discussions with Island County, it was determined that one of the best steps going forward would be to try and annex as much of the land that's in the current UGA that's underdeveloped or undeveloped into the city. And this will provide the city a chance to do the zoning and the capacity analysis for that as part of the EIS and the comp plan process. And the balance of 1541 would then be removed from the population and the housing counts based on an RCW referring to capital improvements that need to be provided for all of these. So as part of any update, as part of this 20-year plan, the state requires that when you do this planning for the 20-year projection, you have to have capital facilities in place or in your 6-year capital facility plan to come on board for this growth. And since that would be challenging to do for the already developed areas, the county decided that we can remove those numbers from the population based on lack of capital facilities, and then maybe plan to have an ILA, because all of these areas are not under one jurisdiction. They have to be planned jointly. They're already developed. If they're undeveloped, bring them into the city, have city infrastructure. These already developed lots, they're already infrastructure, they already have working water and sewer, some of them, in different stages of how and when they were installed. And so you have to have a phased approach to it, and there needs to be a joint study and understanding. You have to develop a tool in which all the jurisdictions can understand, including the state, in terms of what we're doing here. So one jurisdiction cannot envision what will happen in this area by themselves. So a joint study is needed. So this is all the changes that have occurred during our discussion with the county, and therefore they're bringing forth this amendment so that they can adopt their comprehensive plan based on these numbers. So I have a map here to kind of just show the challenging areas. I mean, these areas already developed, already fully surrounded by the city. These are the areas that are challenging to plan for as an individual jurisdiction, so you got to do joint planning. The areas on the south that are underdeveloped is what's proposed for annexation, and I think the council is aware that there's a joint meeting next week to consider that as part of the comp plan, the annexation. So this is the area that is coming up for the joint annexation, and so just wanted to include this as part of the strategy of how all of this is being considered. So basically what the changes do is to clarify or to amend the population projection from 102 to 102,639 to 99,202, and then reduce the allocation that was originally provided to Oak Harbor, reduce that to 3992 to match the capacity that we have determined through our analysis. So these are the changes that are being proposed. I think it's a step in the right direction to have this annexation at least come out of all the discussions with the county, and that is going to allow Oak Harbor to try and use those UGA lands. Will probably, if the annexation occurs, be rolled into our comprehensive plan, will be rolled into our EIS process, and the city will start to plan for those areas with city zoning, etc. And I think that's a step in the right direction with this entire change. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and comments from the council. Thank you.
All right, council, questions, comments for CAC? Councilmember Stuckey.
All right, a few questions here, and I'm all for that reduction in housing units. Always thought that was a little aggressive. First things first, does this affect any of the other municipalities? I remember there was a time where Langley was looking at their density based on the conversations about our density. Does this affect Coupeville or Langley at all?
No, it's more of a surgical approach to making these amendments that impact just Oak Harbor's UGA. They did not want to impact their allocations.
Okay. When it says immediate annexation, what does that mean practically, like time frame wise? I mean, immediate is, hey, we sign this the next day it's annexed. Like, what does that mean?
I think the ordinance is crafted 5 days after signing.
Okay, that's pretty immediate.
Usually, yeah.
When I was reading all the material there, one of the things that was added is the county must be consistent with the associated municipality. Is on page 7 of that document. What does that mean exactly? Does that mean that they need to look at adopting our density in that area? I mean, what does that mean that they must be consistent with the associated municipality?
The numbers that they have in their comprehensive plan document that they're reflecting as they're planning for, it should be the same as what we reflect in our plan.
Gotcha. Okay. was overthinking it there. The 80 acres that we're talking about for annexation, does that mean, I remember there was a time, and I think our city administrator put it together. There was conversations about a few annexation areas. Does that mean that those others are kind of off the table?
I don't know if they are off the table, but for this current annexation, what we're trying to accomplish, these are the only parcels that we're talking about. Adding others would mean other reasons to do so, and I think that starts to get outside the scope of what we're
So there's
trying to do.
totally separate issues.
I think so.
Just to add on to that, thanks, Kak. The part of what we're discussing is that there would be a separate process for what we're referring to as Area 5, and we're talking about having a working group that works on that in the future. This action is the immediate activity that we want to take on right now.
That 80 acres, when we annex it, it comes in, does it automatically come in at R2? Like, what is it annexed is R2?
Yes.
What does R2 practically mean for 80 acres unit density, like number?
It's a limited residential, limited multifamily residential is how the terminology it's termed. And so R2 is the zoning that you will see duplexes and fourplexes.
Okay. And lastly, the 80 acres, what do we know, and this is more a question for me, what do we know about the owners of those 80? I mean, does one owner own 40 acres? Because if they do and they have no interest in doing anything with it, that does, I mean, it helps our calculation, but it doesn't practically help the issue. I mean,
I can tell you very from a 30,000 foot level that there are less than 20 property owners for the properties that are being considered for annexation. There are multiple properties owned by the same entity or the same person, so less than 20. And we've sent letters out to the property owners on record about the annexation.
but we don't, and again, I understand we're annexing this, and I understand that it would help with the numbers for this, but we honestly don't know if any of them have any intent of developing those in the future. Is that correct?
As being part of the UGA, I don't know if that meant something for them in the long term. So these are maps that have been established since 1995, so they're aware that they're in the UGA. So we don't know till they come into the city whether they have actual plans, but we've been approached by people that are not in the UGA
Sure.
that want to come in. But some of these properties, we haven't had direct applications or requests for any development at this.
Because
I'm aware of.
it seems like this would have quite an effect on them. I mean, one, it changes their property tax structure a little bit, being in the city, correct?
It will change city city
Yeah.
taxes.
And then two, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's if they just don't do anything, they don't have to bring things up to city code. But the moment they start doing any development, then we are talking about hookup for utilities and sidewalks and things like that.
Correct.
Okay, certainly a consideration if someone owned those properties. So that is all the questions I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, CAC. At what level does will the property owner have to redevelop, or I mean, if somebody just wants to remodel their home, is that going to then require them to develop the entire property up to the R2 standard? I mean, at what level does that trigger that?
I believe there may be a 50 or 60% assessed value. So I think people will be able to do additions as long as it remains single family. They could probably operate it as a single family and expand even. R2 zoning does not prohibit R1. So as a single family residential use, you're permitted use. Now, through the comp plan process, if the zoning changes to, I believe, R3 and above, that's when the existing homes would become non-conforming, and eventually when they develop, they would have to get the standards of the R3 or the R4 if that's the zoning eventually that the comp plan adopts for that property.
Okay. once the annexation takes place, what level of service, it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, that if they're currently on like Island Disposal has a 10-year or something contract that they can continue that. And so we don't necessarily have to provide solid waste, but fire and police then become our responsibility. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is the requirement for all the properties in the city to maintain some sort of solid waste management. So if there are properties currently that don't have any service, maybe, and if they do have a structure on it, then they may be required to have some, even with Island Disposable, whoever the franchise agreement for that area is will be able to continue the service there.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Romero?
I'm delighted with the progress, CAC. Thank you for that part. I did want to make an observation that we discussed neighborhood centers, small locations scattered over the decades as the area develops so that people have stores and similar items nearby. And my thought is that if there was a higher concentration than, say, R2 permitted in zoning, then that increases the degrees of flexibility because R1 would still be allowed. Is that right, under R3?
Under R3, they start to fall off. R1 and R2, they're permitted. R3 starts to lock in the higher density.
Okay. But at least in military terms, we always talk about leaving our options open. And I would think that a higher density, especially when you're putting in expensive infrastructure, improves efficiencies. And of course, we're talking years down the road. But my thought is that R2 is probably not as dense as housing density as might be preferred in my opinion, but I'm not speaking as a professional on it. It's just a thought with regard to these neighborhood centers, and maybe that would be one area that could eventually become one. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for the good of the order on this matter? Yeah. Councilmember Peterson, are you wanting to speak?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I'm just trying to be nice.
Okay.
I've asked before, and I think I've forgotten. The D.R. Horton project, is that included in those numbers already?
The D.R. Horton project is in the city.
But the numbers that we have to come up with that,
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah,
that's already
it's
included.
based on zoning, so it's calculated, it's part of the calculation.
okay. And the green line that goes up Swantown I'm confused. If you go back to the map, what's the green line up there in the top that goes up?
Good question. So we do have areas that the county has included as part of these descriptions here, and this is the Swantown Road. The county wants to dedicate the Swantown Road to the city so that maintenance-wise and infrastructure-wise, we can extend it. And so the county was involved in doing the survey and the describing the area for us, and it was very easy for them to add that Swantown, and we were okay with it. It doesn't affect the annexation. It improves our kind of coordination with them. So just threw that in there. So it's not a boundary. It's just a right of way
Perfect.
line that we're bringing in for convenience of the process.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Glad to be here today in person, folks. Couple of questions, but my first one is the patches that are still the county, are those even being discussed for annexation in the future? Or, I mean, are they part of the UGA? Those sections that are still fully Island County within our city, right? Our little pockets and islands, yes. That and then part of that also is my concern for, that western side of our city, Hillcrest area, and how that's looking and whatnot, and how that fits into all this if it does.
Those are the areas that made it challenging for us to consider all of these numbers in this round in the UGA. So that's the area of focus for the next 7-8 years before you get to the next update to work with Island County. The joint agreement is to try and address those areas and see what is possible for growth and how do we extend infrastructure and who bears the cost for all of that. Financially, it has to be feasible in order for all of this to happen. So there's that's the challenge. That's what's, and we have to deal with it before the next update, because in the next update we have to do something with that area, because that's what the state was saying. You gotta find a way to put your capacity there, and we were like, well, how can we? We don't have ways to extend our infrastructure there. We can't spend the money to do that either unless we have some understanding of what and how that will happen. So we're creating the tool by which we can address that.
Okay, cool. And my other one, going back to the property owners, right? Because as property owners, I imagine some of them, my understanding was nobody would be forced into upgrading their systems until it was a catastrophic failure. Is that not true if in this scenario? Because you said something about 50% change to a remodel, which maybe that doesn't change the septic system, but that's what I'm saying, right? Like,
the septic system can continue to operate as long as it's functional. If they still want to do modifications and it can meet the Island County will still have to do their public health inspections for these. As long as it meets that, I think they should be able to do modifications to the house as well. Now, if the septic system fails, they'll be required to connect to the city sewer. Now, some single-family homes are exempt. I think there are exemptions for annexed properties or pre-existing properties to be on septic system
until that failure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
Thinking of Councilmember Morrow's comments, when we bring, assuming this goes through and it brings in that R2 designation, do we have to go with that, or is that just is our code that when we do something like this that it has to be R2, or is that one that just makes the most sense? And if so, why?
It's just the one that makes most sense. Most of the people, at least in the most recent past annexations, residential properties, have chosen that because then they have the flexibility between going single-family home or threeplexes, townhomes, etc. So that gave the best template, and it's a middle ground. So this property, that's our land use map, and these properties are yellow, designated as low-density residential. They can come in as three zoning designations: R1, R2, or R3. So we're recommending R2 just because it's in the middle ground. R3 would immediately put single-family homes non-conforming, so we didn't necessarily want to create that scenario right away. No, if through the comp plan process there's some changes occur, then there's a way for public engagement before you make the change, as opposed to just bringing it in as R3.
But I could still, if I own one of these properties, I could still ask afterwards for a rezone to R3 if I wanted to.
Absolutely, even before yes.
Okay.
You can do it through a regular rezoning process immediately after annexation.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Councilmember Merrill.
I wanted to affirm Councilmember Stuckey's comments with regard to being able to adjust to an R3 after an initial R1 or R2. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you, CAC, for all your presentation. All right, so we are going to take something out of order next, Maggie. I'm going to put you on the back burner, sorry, but in respect of Emily's Wildman's time from the county, I'm going to ask her to step up next and present on the Island County 5-year homeless housing plan. And here with us today is from Island County Human Services Housing Program Manager, Emily Wildman. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm here today to talk about the 5-year homeless housing plan. This is a plan that is mandated by Washington State Legislature. Each community in Washington, whether at county or city level, is mandated every 5 years to create a 5-year homeless housing plan. For Island County, we're required to reach out to the 2 largest jurisdictions, which was Oak Harbor and Coupeville, to find out if they wanted to do their own plan or if they wanted to have representation on the task force to create this plan, and they chose to have representation. So this plan is for the entire county. And so we did we put out a variety of emails and requests to people throughout Island County, city government, county government, nonprofits, food banks, to see who wanted to participate in this plan. And so for Oak Harbor, Chief Sloik was a representative. We had Nolan, your planner last year, was on the task force at the time. And so that was Oak Harbor's representation, along with lots of organizations in Oak Harbor like Opportunity Council and Spin Cafe and CADA, and organizations that are currently very active in the homeless housing and support services field. Washington State Department of Commerce also released guidance for this plan on what they wanted in it, which, in addition to kind of creating a plan how we're going to address homeless housing, they also wanted reporting on current service levels, current fund sources, estimates of permanent and emergency housing needs, and prioritization of affordable housing funds that we currently have available in this county. Local jurisdictions were required to adopt 5 objectives outlined by the state of Washington that they have in their homeless housing plan. And then within those objectives, the task force that was put together was created action steps, timelines, and people responsible for those underneath those objectives. The task force really advocated for achievable goals within the current budgets and systems. So we have a lot of great ideas, but we don't have $50 million to implement them, nor can we change the behavioral health system. And so we really tried to focus on things that were within our control and within the budget constraints that we currently have. We also distributed a lived homeless housing survey for people who are currently experiencing homelessness, whether they were literally homeless or in a shelter, and included that in the plan around what they felt their barriers were, what things were working for them in the community currently. And then also this plan is mandated to align with the housing element of the Island County Comprehensive Plan and then local jurisdictions comprehensive plan like Oak Harbor. And so although this is a totally separate plan, it is mandated to align with the HAPT, and so the HAPT that CAC just referenced around the housing element and how much housing is needed. And this plan is really focused on the emergency shelter and the permanent supportive housing pieces of that housing element. Affordable housing is also addressed in that plan, but this is more of the focus of the plan. And the task force also really emphasized the need for more collaboration between the cities and county. The county and Oak Harbor used to be pretty separate and siloed, but their communication and working together in this area has improved drastically over the last few years. And so we really want to capitalize on that and keep moving in that direction. So like I said, there are 5 objectives, and so I'm going to go over each of the objectives and kind of summarize what the plans are within those objectives. And then if you guys want to ask questions at the end. So the first objective is to promote an equitable, accountable, and transparent homeless crisis response system. And this goal is really focused on making sure that everyone in Island County has equitable access to services. We want to re-engage a coordinated entry oversight committee. So coordinated entry is the place that anybody in Island County or any county in Washington State can access services if they're having a housing crisis, Our coordinated entry is housed at the office in Coupeville, but there are also side doors. We have a homeless outreach case manager who travels around. She goes to spin. She goes and meets people at the library or wherever they want to meet. There's a veterans side door, so anybody who is a veteran can access services either through coordinated entry or through Opportunity Council directly. Anybody experiencing domestic violence can access services directly through CADA, our local domestic violence nonprofit, or through the coordinated entry. And then young adults can access services through coordinated entry or through Ryan's House for Youth, which is our local young adult, which is ages 18 to 24. There are several systems that the Department of Commerce has set up to really regulate how our outcomes and if we're providing equitable services in this county. And so we really want to promote those and teach our nonprofits how to use those tools so that they can track what they're doing and how they're doing, and so they can make shifts in their services if needed. We want to strengthen communication with our buy-in-for organizations. So buy-in-for organizations are organizations that are run for vulnerable communities by somebody who is a member of that community. So, for example, we partner with Mission Ministries, Pastor Dean, and so she really provides a link between the county and African American and Black community members who maybe are not feeling really comfortable coming into the county or communicating with the county. And so she really helps bridge that gap. We have a buy-in-for partnership with Pastor Maria Francisco, who works with Spanish-speaking populations. So we want to strengthen those relationships and also explore maybe some other avenues that we aren't meeting the needs of people yet. And then we want to promote capacity building opportunities for our smaller organizations. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, have heard about all the budget cuts and concerns about federal funding. And so we really want our organizations to have different funding sources. So if one thing gets cut, they don't have to shut down, that they have a variety of things to rely on. Our second objective is strengthening the homeless service provider workforce. This work is really, really taxing. It's a lot of exposure to trauma, a lot of 10 steps or 1 step forward and 10 steps backward. And so we really want to increase the capacity for our service providers around better training opportunities and establishing some local best standards for case management. We don't want somebody to go to one organization and receive a different kind of level of service at another organization. We want everybody who's seeking services in Island County to get that same standard of care. We'd like to advocate to Commerce to increase inflation funds for livable wages. Historically, nonprofits and direct service providers are on the lower wage scale, and it makes them finding housing themselves challenging. We also want to advocate to the legislature to re-examine the area median income and how it's impacting affordable rents. So, for example, we have Camas Flats that has been built in Oak Harbor and is opening, and people are moving in, and those rents are based on area median income. The highest is at 80% and below. And for a lot of people, even though they're set at an affordable rate, they're still really out of reach for many of our most vulnerable people. Some of the rents are over $2,000 a month. And so the affordable rents are based on a median income, which means they're taking the highest and the lowest and coming into the middle. And in this community, we have a lot of very, very high wage earners, and their wages are going up pretty consistently every year. And then those people who are at the bottom, who are on fixed incomes like disability or Social Security, their incomes are only going up maybe $15, $20 a year. And so the gap in between is getting bigger, and then it's throwing that area median income off. And so the affordable rents are becoming less and less affordable. And then in turn, we have the Housing Authority that has vouchers, the housing choice vouchers that people are on wait lists for years, and the vouchers need to be set at a high enough rate that they can find a place to live in the community. And so it is this push-pull between those two things that we really want to advocate to see if there's other ways to look at setting affordable rents. And then we'd also like to encourage agencies to provide job share opportunities for more full-time work. It's really hard to afford to live anywhere anymore without full-time work. And so a lot of our agencies are too small to provide maybe a full-time job, but if they paired together, they could provide maybe a full-time work for a custodian who would go from different shelters to clean or provide maintenance or that sort of thing. Objective 3 is to prevent episodes of homelessness whenever possible. So before the pandemic, prevention was kind of the bottom layer of concern because people could, for the most part, if they got a little behind on their rent, they could come up with it. Nowadays, rents are much higher, deposits are much higher, and the state has found that people can't make it up anymore. They can't borrow the money, they can't put it on their credit card and make up for it over the next 3 or 4 months. And so if you are a couple months behind on your rent, it's digging a hole so that people just can't get out of it. So we need to focus more on prevention than we needed to in the past. We need to advocate to Commerce to increase flexible funding. Currently, people have to be behind on their rent to qualify for assistance. That creates a negative feeling with the landlords oftentimes, and they get tired of it, and then they stop renewing people's leases if they've received rental assistance, and that's the last thing we want. And so we want to advocate to be able to be more flexible with our funding. If somebody knows they're not going to be able to pay their rent in 2 weeks, then let's help now and not create that negative feeling with the landlord. We need to increase life skills and financial skills, case management. More and more people have really poor credit scores, which is now impacting them finding housing, sometimes finding work, eviction history. So we really want to help people with that financial assistance. And we have Opportunity Council has a great program for that, but we really need to expand that capacity. We want to prioritize prevention services for the people who are most vulnerable, but also help those who are in crisis. Right now, Commerce really asks us to only help the most vulnerable, but we have families who maybe have their car breakdown, a medical bill, and they are kind of slipping through the cracks because they're not vulnerable enough because they're just having this one-time crisis. And we really want to be able to help both ends of the scale. We want to partner with senior service providers to establish housing needs for this population. The senior housing is probably the most impacted by lack of housing. The senior wait lists through the Housing Authority are 5, 7, 10 years on some of the properties. And we can't get properties built quickly. And so we really need to figure out how to better help this population because we have more and more people aging in this community. And this problem is only going to get larger. And then assisting agencies in grant writing support. So city, county, we have grant writers. How can we help do some TA with our local organizations? Objective 4, prioritize assistance based on greatest barriers to housing stability and greatest risk of harm. So we want to collaborate with Island County Emergency Management, Oak Harbor Emergency Management around cold weather shelter options. Wildfire smoke is becoming a bigger issue, extreme heat. So really all kind of extreme weather things that we're running into now, we need to work to get a better system going. Right now, it's kind of like it's not as strong as it could be, and we definitely want to improve that. We need to strengthen our vulnerability form to make sure we are serving the most vulnerable. We need to develop stronger partnerships with agencies serving our BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities. We need to engage more frequently with people accessing services to understand their current barriers. So somebody's barrier when they're unhoused is different than their barrier when they're in shelter and then when they're housed. And we find more and more that just housing people is not enough. They really need more support services over many years to kind of keep them housed and maintain that. And then identifying housing gaps such as respite care, that's a big one. We get calls from the hospital, we get calls from Island Senior Resources. So-and-so needs a surgery, they're homeless, they don't have anywhere to go to recuperate, and we don't have any sort of respite care on the island right now. So we really want to work to improve those kind of gaps in our system. More group homes, more shared housing. Objective 5 is to seek to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. So this goal is probably the most impactful with you all, is we really want to continue strengthening our partnership with the county and city governments to prioritize land around not only affordable housing, but potential shelter sites. We want to increase abilities to braid funding together. So if the county has some funding and the cities have some funding, how can we braid that stuff together? We want to advocate, and I think you guys are doing a great job at this right now, with less restrictive zoning, around looking at where zoning can be shifted to allow for higher density. We have an affordable housing specialist who has been seeking out properties that have higher density, especially for affordable housing. We found the most success at the county level at purchasing property and then putting an RFP out for developers to and that's what led to Camas Flats. That's how Mulberry Village is coming in. So that's been really successful. So we want to do more of that in partnership with the city. And we want to do that not only for affordable housing, but collaborating on potential land for emergency shelter. Currently, there is no place for a unhoused male to go in Oak Harbor overnight. And so that's a huge gap in our system that we really want to try and address. So men with children, in addition to more housing options for women and women with children. But right now, Margie's House is the only emergency shelter in Oak Harbor, and it only serves women or women with children. And then we want to advocate for funding for our aging homeless population. I'm sure you guys see it. There's a lot of people who are unhoused, who have mobility issues, who have chronic health issues, and we are asking our shelter system to really kind of pull at their liability, because they're not allowed to put hands on people. They can't help somebody go to the bathroom. They can't help them get in the shower. And so we're seeing more and more people with higher medical needs that our shelter system is not set up for. And it takes time to get a COPES assessment, which is what would let those people get into assisted living. So we really need some solutions in the middle to help our aging homeless population. So this, there's a public hearing set for this plan on April 14th with the Island County Commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners. So that's kind of the final step in this plan. Does anybody have any questions?
So before I open it up to questions, I also just want to highlight coming up on March 28th, there's an Arts and Elegance dinner. I met with the executive director of the Whidbey Island Homeless Coalition about 6 months ago. They demonstrated a need for financial assistance. So I put together a team of people, and we've set in motion this dinner to raise money. It's essentially taking place of Festival of Trees that's no longer happening. Is it Festival of Trees or the other dinner? I don't remember. I don't know. One of them is not happening anymore, so this is essentially going to be same type of platform. Tickets, I guess, are going really quickly, so that's exciting. Everything's been paid for this benefit dinner, so all of the proceeds are going to go back to the Homeless Coalition. This is going to be a huge shot in the arm for them. So I'm very excited for this opportunity, and this will help them a long way in combating some of the issues that Emily's outlined here. So with that, though, just mark your calendars, March 28th. Get your tickets now. And I look forward to seeing you all at that dinner. All right, so with that, I will turn it over to council for questions, comments of Emily. Yes, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions, but they were coming up and you were checking them off a little bit. And thank you so much for acknowledging the struggle for homeless men. It's not just, they are the last to be taken care of and always have been the last to be taken care of in our society. And that's, you know, it's got its own reasons, and
Sure.
We're not here to fix the problems from the past. We're trying to help create solutions that are going to solve our problems going into the future. And I've spent the better part of 15, 20 years supporting and trying to help people through homelessness, through my work, through nonprofits, through other organizations, and obviously absolutely dealing with it myself, as well as dealing with family members that have dealt with it. This is a great start. The one question I did want to kind of get to early is, and I'll only ask one or two before I come back to another one. If all the nonprofits fell off the side of the earth tomorrow, what's the county's plan?
We'd be in big trouble.
And I don't mean to call the county out, because I'm not. We would be in big trouble here too. I mean, all of us would be in huge, we'd have way more situations going on. The city's impact, the police department would be way busier than they are. You know, hospitals would be overflowing with things. I mean, this is not like, absolutely. So we're grateful for all that. You mentioned some gaps, and we've had these gaps historically in our society. This isn't the only community I've lived in that has dealt with this. And it's, we always excuse me, words come faster sometimes than my brain can process. Sometimes we lean into these with nonprofits, because that is the way to get it done.
Right.
As the mayor indicated, nonprofits struggle to pay their bills.
Right.
People don't work for nonprofits helping homelessness to get rich. I don't know any that have at all, and I've sat on a few boards. I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful that we can support what we have and create stuff that's going to bridge the gaps. Because much like homelessness, addiction, mental health, cancer recovery, you know, any kind of major recovery we have to go through in our life, it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen just because I have a job or just because I have a house over my head.
Right.
There's so many things impacting people in this world today, regardless of their housing situation. So I know that people struggle at every level in life. And I've known people that have enough money in the world to buy happiness, you would think, and they struggle with some of the exact same things that these people on the street are struggling with.
Right.
Same things that probably a percentage of the people in here are struggling with. And so we got to keep going, pushing forward. We got to bring more topics. We got to keep this on the forefront. I heard you, I list a whole list of problems we have in this community that need addressing. And, you know, this is all part, you know, we're at a really good opportunity with all these comp plans and everything to really set in motion some things. And the city of Oak Harbor has an obligation to, you know, a good, if, you know, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, 40% of the population lives on the north end of the island. Oak Harbor is the services for that 40%, if not greater, I mean, to be fair. And so historically, Oak Harbor has let the county just deal with it. And I hope we can stop that process. We have this so far with this mayor and this administration. I appreciate the work, and we have to keep going with it. And so I hope you'll be seeing me a little bit more often probably than you have in the past. I have had a year of kind of just getting some medical things taken care of. So we're on the back end of that and ready to start charging in. Thank you for acknowledging the side doors. I mentioned it in another meeting online. I just want to kind of reiterate it. The county needs to have a coordinated entry presence location within the city somewhere. And the county has got pockets of land, and I know they have some commercial buildings too. I would really like to see that happen. Again, the largest portion of the homeless population is probably living in Oak Harbor and busing out to Coopville, right, in order to get overnight stay. And that's the extent of what we can do for that critical people. So again, thank you. And if there's a question in there, I think you mostly covered it, but that's all I have for now.
I will say the Oak Harbor piece and coordinated entry came up at the last presentation I had with the Police Oversight Committee, and I agree. Coopville was really chosen because it's of geographical location, so the south end Port Camino, they get the really the lowest end of the stick. But we do have an office in North Hook Harbor, and so we would like to increase our presence here. We've started that with having the homeless case manager in this area, but I definitely see the need for, maybe down the road, like one day a week where we're here. It is not foreseeable in the future that it would switch from Coopville, but we could certainly expand our footprint here in Oak Harbor.
So, Kristen, your comments are appreciated and welcomed. I know how much work you do in this area. I appreciate Emily a ton. I appreciate our chief of police. I appreciate Representative Dave Paul and his wife Rachel. They are all working on the task force as well as different committees as well, with their advocating at the state level as well as locally. We have a lot of people. Commissioner Jill Johnson comes to every meeting, and she's been involved. Commissioner Bacon's been here as well. We're all working collaboratively together to, deal with this issue and the challenges that we face. So, and I know that there's a lot of negative stuff that we see in social media and in the public because they want instantaneous change. It takes time, though. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight, but we are working on it, and we're working together, I would say, for the first time in a long time. So, but I appreciate that. Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
Piggybacking on that a little bit, I like how we're a body with all come from different experiences. We all have different skills. I was waiting for you to chime in, and you did not disappoint. So I appreciate it, Councilmember Wittgenstein. Few questions, a little bit about the report itself, having gone through it. Talking about the amount of unhoused, I know the point in time is at 173. I understand that's voluntary. That's really not a great picture. Yet on the next page it says 1,229, which is a huge difference, which not totally unexpected because one's voluntary, one's going based on data. That 1,229, I was looking like where the data is coming from. We can never be 100% accurate, but do you think that's a pretty darn good ballpark, or do you think that could be using old data that people have been taking out of a system or something like that?
I think that's pretty accurate in that is over a full year, and so that you might be couch surfing for a while, you might be staying with friends, and then you're homeless for a few nights, and that data comes from, like you said, it comes from the homeless management information system. It comes from medical benefits, food benefits, and so I think it's a more clear picture of not just who's unhoused, but who's unstably housed. And so maybe they're housed tonight, but they don't know that they're going to be housed next month. And so I do think that is a representative more of the instability, how many people in our community are feeling that.
Sure. Because, there's definitely, you could look at just the point in time, and if you're playing the political move, hey, homelessness really isn't a problem. There's only 173, but it's voluntary. So,
and sorry, one more quick thing. Point in time will only count people that are literally homeless. It doesn't count people that are staying on somebody's couch. And so that makes up a big difference too.
I remember probably 4 or 5 years ago, I went to a meeting where it was the majority of nonprofits, and a lot of those being churches. And it was very clear in that meeting that a lot of those organizations don't talk to each other, and they didn't all know what everyone else was doing. You have your big players, and then you have your not so big players, as I mentioned, kind of like churches. And I thought that was a good meeting, and it was surprising to me how much everyone didn't know what everyone else did. I haven't heard of those meetings continuing. Maybe they are, and I just don't know. Can you give us some status on those meetings of getting all these organizations together? Does that happen on a regular basis? What does that look like?
Yeah, we have, I would say it needs improvement for sure. We have what's called the Housing Provider Network, where we host a meeting quarterly. Ideally, sometimes it's only twice a year, where we try and get everybody in the community together to talk about kind of what their services are, what's changes, new staff, that kind of thing. But that is one of the things with the Oversight Committee that we'd really like to get some of the more key players together more regularly to exactly what you were saying. What are you doing? What services do you have? What changes are going on? Because that is an area like city and county that had been siloed for a long time, and we really want that to change, and so that is a big goal.
The Camas Flats, that That's wonderful. The Mulberry Place, is it? The one on,
Mulberry Village.
on Swandale? Any timeframes on that? Just ballpark?
I believe they are potentially going to break ground in this fall.
Okay. And the last few more questions here, kind of the more, let's say, uncomfortable questions, shall we say. I saw, and it wasn't in your presentation, but it was in the plan where we talked about no barrier housing. Is that something that's still discussed, or is that kind of something that was just a brief footnote and not really because it wasn't in your presentation, but it was in the plan?
So low barrier housing is more and more recognized as best practice, and our funding is more and more requiring low barrier, but not no barrier. We don't. The Haven would be as close to no barrier, and even with no barrier, you can't be, under the influence and out of control in your behavior while you're there. You can't threaten to, kill a staff member. There's still things, but most of the shelter that we're focused on is like low barrier in that if you have a criminal history, that's not going to keep you out. There are some things, like if you're a registered sex offender, that is going to keep you out of most projects throughout the state. But if you have an assault 5 years ago, we don't want that to keep you out of housing or housing options. So it is lowering the barriers for people who have eviction history, criminal history, and financial lack of finances, but it's not removing all barriers. It's trying to lower it so that the people can access it who need it.
So if I was somebody who was a drug user, and I'm not really taking steps to combat that, am I still allowed in a low barrier?
If you are managing your behavior, you can't use on site, you can't act, you can't break the rules, there's a behavior contract, then yes. It depends. Some of these are going to be time limited, so if you're not engaging in the program, you might not be getting an extension. So we have a lot of programs now where you can get your stay extended if you are engaging in the process and engaging with your case manager. So that probably wouldn't happen for you if you were using and not really wanting to take any steps to work on permanent housing.
So there are some strings attached. Again, it's low, but there are some strings.
Yes.
Okay. And then one question that comes up a lot is when it comes to drug, alcohol, and mental illness. And I want to be clear, I'm by no means saying you're homeless, that's why you're homeless and that's why you're there. Okay? I don't even think we probably are even talking about a majority of the people of homeless that affects. But it does affect some. And those individuals are, shall I say, often the most visible in our community. So when people are, I hate to use the term cherry picking, but for lack of a better term, I'm going to use it. When people are negative towards that population and they're cherry picking a little bit, they're going to hold up, hey, that person on that corner who's always acting a certain way, or I saw the active drug use in this bush and things like that. We tend to cherry pick that and say, well, that's the homeless population. I'm not doing that. But what I do want to ask, and I don't expect a firm answer because if no one really can, for those individuals, what are the options? I mean, if there's somebody who doesn't want assistance and doesn't really have much show of stopping my behavior, is it pretty much, I hate to say it, put the chief on this, but it's kind of catch and release where either we pick them up and then back on the street and problem's not solved? I mean, again, I'm not looking for a firm this is the solution, because if you did, I think Seattle and a lot of other places could make good use of you. But what in this plan, certainly has been come up as a discussion, what are we doing when it comes to that population who goes, I don't want the help, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to be?
So I think it's really twofold. I think if we could create some more opportunities for like emergency shelter to move some of the people out of the Haven that are ready and spin for that next step, they would remove them from that environment so that the people who are running those programs could put more energy towards people who aren't ready. And then the county has established like the Recovery Navigator program and the co-responder programs that really try and engage with people in crisis in the moment, and they're not ready today, but maybe they're going to be ready next week. And so continuing to kind of try and harm reduction. So maybe somebody is ready to not give up drinking, but they're ready to give up liquor. Trying to step down the harm that's happening to help people get ready. And certainly there is a small percentage of people that maybe we're not going to be able to assist. But I think with the more resources we have and the more ability to remove some of those barriers, then we can help more people.
Does that extend to mental illness as well? I mean, well, just go see a doctor. Well, that's not for someone with mental illness. I mean, is there a mechanism to help enforce that?
Washington State, unfortunately, has some of the worst mental health care in the nation, and they have chosen to go with a very hands-off, like individual rights approach, and so it's very hard to get somebody hospitalized against their will, and so there would have to be changes kind of at a system level to potentially really impact the behavioral health, but certainly increasing behavioral health would be the first step. We have a lot of it's gone to Zoom, which is great for maybe you and I, but not so great for somebody who's living on, who's unhoused. And that we didn't address that much in this plan because we don't have a lot of impact on behavioral health because it is entirely, the county, does. We certainly, Commissioner Johnson and our behavioral supervisor, Catherine Clancy, they do a lot of work around trying to communicate the needs of the community. But it's a big problem, and we need better mental health services and behavioral health services to really make an impact on that.
And last question, I feel like, it's just my opinion, but it helps when people have a sense of purpose. I've seen, and granted, in much bigger cities, we're talking New York City, things like that. You can't always apply that directly. Where there's opportunities for, hey, we'll give you housing, but we need you to clean up trash for an hour or two. And if you can do that, and you can do that for a week, then maybe we can help you into some training programs. Is there any talk about giving people jobs that may be menial or easy to do with little training as a stepping stone to try to get them further employment through a county level?
I mean, I think that there are programs like Ryan's House is, they're building a commercial kitchen, and so they're going to help do some training around getting like your health card and cooking. And there are, I lost the other one. I do not foresee us saying you need to do this job to have housing. For one, we would lose our funding. That you're not allowed to do that. And two, I think that I do think that the federal government is moving in that direction, and there are lots of opinions on both sides of that around whether that's going to be effective or not. I think most of the people who are the most vulnerable, they're not necessarily ready for that, and so the hope is to get them housed, to help with sobriety and behavioral health, and then that would be when they're ready maybe to get into the workforce if that's an option for them. But at this point, I think people, when you're dealing with the most vulnerable, they're in really like that crisis mode, survival mode, and so you really got to get them out of that first before you can kind of tackle that pyramid, like water, food, housing, and then the next step.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions and for what you do.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, Councilman Romero.
Of course, I affirm and support the observations that have been made so far, and I'm going to take up the issue that's not been voiced at all, and that is with regard to drug traffickers who, in fact, are very skillful at engaging and recruiting the most vulnerable people to get them to be substance dependent. And it's a multi-million-dollar business, and there's a lot of stakeholders involved in it, and the stakeholders don't always want to see the addicts come around to being free from that. As I've said before, I view drug traffickers very much like slave owners. They hold them captive, and they do crime to support their habit, and it's all very. I mean, I know it from law enforcement. I just could read it it's just like in the back of my hand. I know it's so familiar with it, and consequently, there need to be consequences for individuals who are trafficking, and there's many that live on the streets by choice. I mean, I know that. I mean, because I've dealt with them. So there are those who are lazy, and there are those who are defiant, and some are addicts, and some are mental cases because of the drugs. And then there are some who willfully disable themselves somehow or another so they can get on the dole, shall we say, of governmental services. So I say all that not because I have lack of empathy, because I'm very familiar with many people who, through no fault of their own, are not only homeless but jobless. I mean, they're in desperate straits. But I am describing that the incentive for bringing universal addictions, if it was possible, that has to be removed. And it's not simply, I mean, we still have to take care of the folks that are homeless, and we try to, but we need some tough love in here. And that's where we need strong law enforcement, prosecutors that will prosecute, judges that will rule, and not just have a rotating door so that the very same traffickers that get busted and then they catch it, as this expression goes, catch and release. That's ludicrous. Okay, so I did some quick math, and I'm not going to go into detail of it, but the cost of an individual who is homeless and in all likelihood jobless, but not always, it could easily be an exponential, or at least a compounded cost. It's not like 10 plus 10 plus 10. It's 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, because the people who are on the street, they're not contributing to the tax base. They're drawing tax monies through services. And then on top of that, they're depreciating the quality of our town, because I've been in a number of towns that were wonderful at one time, and now they're ruled by homeless druggies and drug dealers. I mean, I call it my hometown of Burien. It used to be a wonderful town, but now it's just, it's gotten to be a disaster. So I say all that because I wanted to voice in public this concern, because I have empathy not just for the homeless who are homeless through no fault of their own, but I have empathy for the people who work hard, people even who have 2 and 3 jobs. And guess what? Their taxes are supporting the people who willfully are saying, I'm living on the street. And I've talked to them recently. They say, no. Work is not my thing. So, and here I am, retired from the Navy, and I work as hard as ever. I try to put in 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing public service and work. Okay. So it's made a matter of record, and I've addressed it. I don't have anything else to say, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, it's anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Peterson.
Okay. Didn't turn on, thank you. You mentioned the dollars amount, and you said we have many, many high-income earners in Oak Harbor. Many is not.
No, in Island County. The area median income is set by the whole county, so not just Oak Harbor.
Can you tell me what many actually is? 20, 40, 180? What's many high-income earners, and what's the high income to you? Because
Well, I know that there are approximately 6,000 units that are at second, third homes in this community. And so I would say those people are very high income. So I could give you that figure right off the top of my head, but I don't have an exact tax bracket number for you.
Okay, because you equated that to our median income. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming there are numbers somewhere. What is Island County's median income?
For a family of 4, 100% of the area median income, I believe, is around $112,000.
So, I'm sorry, my pen's not working very well. 112,000 is our median income?
Yes, approximately.
Okay. Yeah, the Oak Harbor will be slightly lower. Okay. Yeah.
And it only breaks it down unfortunately by county, so I can't tell you the city yet.
That's all right. But part of what this deals with is the kind of money we get or the kind of money we need based on the numbers we have. And as I say, many doesn't work for me as a number. So, and then 179 actual homeless people and the rest are in and out of homelessness?
So that is the number that was counted on the day of point in time count. They say that that number is undercounted by about 2.5 times. And those are the people that, yes, are literally homeless. They're in their car, they're in a shelter, they're sleeping outside. They're not sleeping on someone's couch.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, because we talked about this at one time when the school district was speaking to a group I was in, that the young people who are angry at their parents and not living at home anymore are counted in the homeless population. Is that still true?
So the school has, different, they count people who are sleeping on couches, yes, unaccompanied minors not staying at home, yes. Those numbers are different.
But that's not part of your count?
Not part of our count, no.
Okay.
We're not allowed to count that.
Okay.
Unless they are sleeping on the street.
They're bunking with their buddy. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. This is a big work. And I know y'all are working hard on it, and I thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yes, just one second, Barbara. A high-income earner is 198,000 and above, just so you know.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yes, Barbara. Or Councilmember Arms, sorry.
Whatever. I want to thank you for presenting this information. You know, this is a long-term thing that's been going on for years. You know, I'm old enough to remember when it all really hit the fan and started, and it's really hard. And we have so many organizations that are trying so hard. And I wish we had, you know, like a place where we knew where all this information was. You know, where are all these facilities? Like if you have somebody that needs something, then you're scrambling yourself to figure out which place do I go? Like you have a, you know, some kind of book or something where we have the information out. Because I ran into that situation and, you know, I'm scrambling to try to answer that person's question. Luckily they found something, but, you know, it was, well, how about here, here, or there? So I wish we had a better way to put the information out. Like you could, it's a lot of work, but you can go here, there, and whatever. And it is very hard to do. You know, it does take a lot of resources, it takes a lot of energy, and you guys do a fabulous job. This is a long-standing problem, and I think part of the problem in Oak Harbor is the jobs. There isn't jobs that equate for what the houses are paying.
Right.
You know, you can't expect somebody on $15 an hour to think they're gonna rent their apartment for $1,500 a month, because then you have utilities, the car, the insurance. It's all the things that go with it that we forget. You know, you look at, oh, well, he's got a job. Well, you forgot, you know, he has other things to do.
Right.
And so it'd be interesting to see that kind of collaborative information so that if you had a crisis with somebody you knew, it would be there. But you did an outstanding job. I hope you come back. I hope we get more information, and whatever we can do, I would really appreciate helping. You know, it's a cause dear to my heart too.
Thank you. And if you do have somebody, really contact and coordinated entry is the best option, because unfortunately there's wait lists really for all the shelters right now. And so we have those wait lists. The people who are most vulnerable get sent to the openings. And so that would be the best bet right now.
So Emily, you guys do have a resource tab on your county website, do you not, that has all of this information listed on it?
We do. I don't know. I haven't looked at it recently enough to know
Okay,
it off the
no,
top,
that's
but
fine. I
yes.
didn't mean to put you on the spot with
No,
that.
no,
It was
but
just to say,
we should have at
because
least
one of the
basic
things that we can
information.
do is I will have Maggie work with the county too, and we can put a link up on our website that puts you through to that. So
That'd be great.
And I do have some information that was just shot to me here. So Oak Harbor, approximately $76,084 is the median income. Is that it, David? And then the median individual income is $44,000 for Oak Harbor.
From the unverified AI results. Those numbers were for household income from the
Okay.
unverified AI
Okay,
results.
so I'm just saying, so that's what he, just shot over. So again, the 198 though is a national number for a high income earner. So that is a safe number that you can use. So.
And I shouldn't have said many, many. I probably should have just said one many.
Well, that would not surprise me though. I mean, if you look, especially on the south end, there are a lot of second homes, and so, and in the line of work that I come from, I know what people make. There are many high income earners there. So, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, no. So, yeah. Any other questions for Emily? Oh, yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. You had mentioned assistance for those that fall behind on rent. Is that same true for somebody that falls behind on a mortgage, for example? Or is it?
Unfortunately, no. We had mortgage assistance during the pandemic, and that money ended, and so we do not have mortgage assistance. There is a Washington State resource line for people who are facing foreclosure and having struggles with paying their mortgage. I don't know exactly what services provide, but we do give that number out. But that is something that the state has recognized that we need, but I think because we're in such a deficit right now in Washington State that there's not money being put forward, but hopefully in the future that would be something that could be available again, because I know that was really helpful for people.
And then the methodology for using median income, where does that come from? I mean, is that required versus the ability to use actual income, right? Because you mentioned like Camas Flat, some of those apartments are over $2,000, but is there a methodology or a way to use just actual income and make it a percentage of somebody's earnings?
The income is set by HUD, and so the federal government oversees area median income, but the state could look at proposing a different way to do that, and then my guess would be they would need to get permission to do that from the federal government, because it's kind of a standard practice across the country.
Okay, thank you.
There are, and just so you know, there are veterans programs for federal veterans and for active duty military for mortgage relief. So, yes, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again as well for all of the information and for supporting the county like you do. I'm going to kind of say what I don't think you could. Yes, there are, I got to talk to the mayor about, I can't tell everybody, you know. Right? Isn't that right? Yeah, okay. I'm talking, what I'm saying is, yes, the organizations meet probably still on a quarterly basis, because I still get emails from them that bring the nonprofits and church organizations that support people in need. And they meet typically at St. Augustine's. I don't know if they're meeting anywhere else, but most of the major churches are involved in supporting. And then I know that Sven and Homeless and Senior Services and Island County has been there a few different times. And so that is happening. They also put out a list of all services that does exist out there. So those things are out. They probably could use some injection and update and some new energy into it to help out and revitalize and rejuvenate things. We're not reinventing any wheels here. None of this process is new to any of us. If you've been in the industry as long as I have, it all comes to be, right? Consequences need to be enforced if we can enforce them. This is a bigger problem. It really is. We're trying to address it through our comprehensive plan and impacting the growth of housing needs, and we already have a shortage of housing, right? We don't have enough jobs for people that live here to be able to get the housing, right? And so that's the problem. It's way more up than just getting somebody treatment or locking somebody up in jail. The Department of Justice has been treating addiction and behavioral health issues as a crime since the beginning. Addiction and behavioral health medicine was never designated as a disease until a few decades ago. So it's very much late in that process of following that disease model. And so we don't, if you have a heart attack, you go to the hospital. If you have a schizophrenia attack, you go to jail. How is that even close to equitable for all our citizens? But we don't want to release that. So we can't just get rid of a system that has somewhat worked to help keep the problem at bay. But we don't necessarily have anything in place yet that's going to totally take it away. We're in the right direction with this harm reduction. And I'm the last probably to get on the harm reduction boat. I'm an old school, individual from the counseling world that believed in abstinence-based period for a long, long, long time. And that doesn't work as effectively as you think it does. It's not willpower. It's a brain disease. There's a disconnection in our brain that is causing all. I could do a whole school on it if you'd like, but and that was the other thing. I'm more than welcome to visit and help and be a part of that, and I'm much more active starting today. So thank you again, and hopefully I covered what I didn't miss.
Thank you for that. And when you get your invitation to the next one, could you make me your plus one? I would really like to attend that meeting. So,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else for Emily? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. We are now going to take a step backwards and go into City Council finalization of overarching priorities. And here to introduce this topic is our fabulous communications officer, Maggie Aguilar.
Hello, let me grab it.
Before we do that, Maggie, we're going to take a 5-minute quick break for everyone. We'll be back at 2:26.
Sounds good.
All right, it is 2:26. We are going to get back in session here, and we are going to continue on where we left off with City Council finalization of overarching priorities with our Communications Officer, Maggie Aguilar.
Hi.
Maggie,
good-
you can just sit right there. I was
Okay.
gonna say.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. I'm happy to be here today to present the council priorities and the discussions that we had at your council retreat. Let me move over to the next slide. So why are we here today, and the purpose? We're here to review the priorities that you talked about at your retreat, present those categories, and also present the input that you had given at that retreat, present the data, and also look at the final priorities for 27 and 28. Okay. This is just a reminder of your 2025-2026 priorities, which are displayed online on our website. Also, I included the legislative priorities there for you as well to see. On January 8th, as you remember, we held the council retreat, and this is just to remind you of that process. If you needed to trigger your memory of what took place that day, we gave you some sticky notes. We had the green notes were your top priorities for the identified priorities, followed by the yellow notes were your secondary priorities, and then those items were grouped under the 9 overarching priorities and goals, and then we reviewed those, had a discussion, and summarized all of the responses. The top priorities identified that day are listed here. I won't go through all of them, as we are going to go through them throughout the process today, so we'll move on. Okay, so I did break down the priorities, also took key themes from the discussion that day and listed them under the priorities. And I also want to let you know that these were done before I sent you that survey on March 5th. So these are the key themes that were found on that day. So we'll discuss the survey after we go over these. But I'm not going to go over them in complete detail because we will be here for a very long time. But you do have them. And so the first one, obviously, public involvement. These are the key findings, key themes that were discussed that day.
I just want to add to, I'm going to interrupt, but I just want to add, these are your priorities. So when you don't participate in the survey process, I don't want to hear you complaining about that you're not reflected in this, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, next one was the Housing Action Plan, followed by police engagement. I also should note, for the record, that at the council retreat, our chief of police and both chiefs were there. So, followed by employee morale. I also did a brief overview of the employee survey and discussed some of the things that are being discussed at the employee survey committee meetings, which that will be coming up. Our next one will be coming up March 19th. Roadway projects and its key themes. Park maintenance, which also included recreation, park maintenance and recreation. Utility infrastructure. Water supply and storage. Connecting downtown and marina. And then we also had an option for other. So as I went through these themes, I was trying to find an efficient way to conduct today's workshop. So on March 5th, I sent you a survey with these with the questions and a breakdown of every priority with the key themes that I just explained. And I'm proud to announce, Mayor, that everybody took it. So thank you so much. Yeah, it just took a few reminders, but everyone did it. So thank you so much. Yes. Yes. So you have today a presentation that I put together with the priorities and the goals. I also included a summary for each, and that's not listed in the presentation because you have that in front of you. I just completed it last night. So the presentation has, like I said, each priority. I also included the summary for what we had talked about at the retreat, and I took your top 3 goals, 3 or 4 goals based on the survey that you took online. So I do appreciate you taking that, appreciate you trusting the process, and also the comments that you gave at the end of the survey. So the first one, public involvement, our city administrator and David, you also have a copy of that. These are your top goals. Priority 2 is your implement housing action plan. And if you would like a revision on any of the summary, or if you would like to add anything to these top goals, please let me know. I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to meet with you one-on-one and discuss if you would like to add anything or have any additions to some of the goals. I'm happy to do that with you. Priority 3, this was really interesting because there was a 4-way tie for each goal. Yeah, so goal A through D, there were 3 votes each, so that was a 4-way tie. So those are your top 4 priorities there. It was really interesting to see the results because it was pretty much on par with everybody's views. So it was really nice to look at. The employee morale, I added a 4th goal just because there was a tie there as well. And I also want to add with the employee morale, with your permission, I would like to take this to the employee survey committee and discuss this a little further and see what the committee has in terms of suggestions to support this priority. Roadway projects. Yes, of course.
They're invited to everything, correct?
Yes.
So,
They are definitely invited to everything, so we will.
That's on them to show up, right?
We will include that. We will work with council.
I'm just making a point.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank
We will
you.
work with council to navigate through that process to see which items or which activities, events, things like that they can attend. Happy to navigate through that. Roadway projects. Priority 6, your parks and maintenance and recreation. Priority 7 is your repair utility infrastructure. Followed by 8, water storage and supply. And then your priority 9, I included the breakdown of the survey at the very end of the presentation. So if you look at connecting downtown and marina, there is a 1, 2, 3, 5. There's a 5-way tie on all of the other items in the survey. So basically all of that has to do with the waterfront vision to action plan, so we can include some sub-goals into that theme.
Aggie?
Yes, ma'am.
This particular one was actually number 10 and number 11. I'm
Yeah.
assuming you scrunched all that together.
I
and
did. I
saw
combined,
that.
I
Okay.
combined that data. And so when I created the survey, it did multiply that question. And I didn't want to remove it once there was data in there because it's not good practice to remove any questions after there's been data submitted. So I did keep it on there and then just combine both data. Yeah. And again, I included the breakdown of the results. And that is what I have. Do you have any questions? I did have some comments at the end of the survey, so would love to meet one-on-one if you'd like, to create some sub-goals or some other goals. And if something changes within the year, or if something does come up that is an important issue that you would like, I believe we can amend this, right? And, okay.
It's their priorities.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to make sure that this is a document that it could be amended based on your priorities and whatever's important to you. So we are going to do some outreach on this and make sure that the community is able to follow along to see where the progress is, so they're able to see it visually as well. I didn't give one to you, but I should have. You're welcome. And any questions?
Questions, comments? These are your priorities. Yes, Councilmember Romero.
Communications Director Maggie Aguilar, I love this
Oh, good.
because you
Thank
compelled us to think
Good.
about these things.
Good, I'm
Well,
glad.
The administration did, so thank you for that. That's all I have.
Yes, Councilmember Arms.
We do have something new that is going to come out. Margaret Livermore from Main Street is working with the marina to better connect, and they're having some kind of brochure or something that they're working on right now.
I did see that.
And it's going to go to whoever to look at it. So that's kind of an improvement with that, so that we have a better connection with the two.
I did see that. I believe she is trying to create a walking map. Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Would y'all please explain to me, what are you thinking when we are talking about increasing council member presence and engagement with staff? Because my thought process was that when you say staff, are you talking about the department heads? Aren't we just kind of supposed to not deal with staff or talk to staff? I'm just confused about that whole thing.
No, when there are events like the staff holiday party or the staff
The all
picnic,
staff meeting.
those are things that you guys should be coming to and be a part of. When there are staff, departmental, like if there's a retirement and someone's retiring, you guys should be there if you want to be there. Councilmember Stuckey and Councilmember Arms are, sorry, but they're frequently there for all of them. So just pointing that out. So those are the types of things that we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, should you be walking up to an HR person and saying, "Hey, I heard this happened"? No, you shouldn't be doing things like that. But I mean, yes, but it's good to say hello and have a relationship with them, and those are good things. So, yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I will add is sometimes when our staff is presenting at the Chamber of Commerce or there's an event at the center, those are also other good opportunities to chat with the staff. That's what they're looking for, is that engagement where they can talk to you about events and programs. And specifically when they're running a booth, having that conversation with you, because it also shows the community your engagement in the programs that they're working on.
Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
Couple of thoughts. First, I've gone through a few of these goal setting exercises. I will say that what I've seen thus far, this has probably been one of the best and most seamless. I've sat through here for multiple meetings. I love the Whitby News Times article that said council can't prioritize their priorities. I think that was from, 4 years ago? I think the survey you did, and to do it that way, was absolutely wonderful, as opposed to us just sitting here hashing it out. Not that we can't have a little bit of that, but the hashing it out over multiple meetings, boy, that was not always as efficient as it could be. So, wonderful job. Two thoughts. One, on the interactions with staff, and I'm just, because newer to council, it is an interesting ebb and flow. I think we've seen both scenarios. I think we've seen the scenario where council members have come into people's offices and basically told them what to do, which we're not supposed to be doing. And I've seen times where we're completely out of the picture, never talking to them, there's no relationship there, and we're in a bubble. So it's definitely a give and take, and sometimes we overstep, sometimes we understep, but I think, and I don't want to speak for Mayor, I think that's kind of the intent when we talk about interactions with staff. It's not don't interact with staff, don't say hi on the street, don't have any kind of relationship. Right. It's don't go into their office. I mean, I've gone into offices of department heads and asked a question before. I mean, that's totally fine. Or even, a lot of times I'll get people that interact with me and I'll forward it to the department head, like, hey, can you give me a response I can forward on, or could you help? But definitely, we have had instances in the past where we've gone in and made trouble, intentionally or unintentionally. So it's an ebb and flow. But, so that's probably some of the thought process. I do have one specific question, because I know when the community looks at priorities, a lot of times they want things that are easy to understand and immediately tangible. Probably the biggest item would be roads. Roads, I mean, homelessness, sure, but like when we get into like the weeds of like inflow and outflow, I don't think the average person would be like, that should be top priority. It's roads, and whether or not that should be is a different conversation, but we do need to concentrate on roads. Right now, the biggest road is Pioneer. It was West Whidbey, now it's Pioneer. And I see every time we spend money on anything, when are you going to do Pioneer? And I've always used the answer of, well, it's in the CIP, it's supposed to be addressed within the next 5 years, and all that's true. But I actually looked at the CIP the other day, and it is on there, but the part that concerns me, and this might be a David Goldman question, giving him a heads up.
Yeah, he is.
He is, he's always listening. So when I looked at the CIP, and I'm just taking what I saw in the CIP, it says that there's basically going to be substantial work in 27, 28, to the tune of a couple $1 million, and the funding is not secured. It was basically implying it was on grant funding of how that was going to be done. If we're going to make this a priority, do we have funding, or how are we getting the funding? I mean, I just want to be able to tell people, yes, it is actually being worked on. It's not just on a plan that's going to keep being pushed back over and over.
All right, so thank you for that question, Councilmember Stuckey. What we're going to do is, when we put the budgets together, we want to follow guidelines. And this survey responses and the work that the City Council has done over the past 2 months will be those guidelines that'll help us develop the budget. So we're going to start out the capital improvement plan process relatively soon, and we're going to put together the priorities based on this document, and then we'll plug in the revenues that we have available to manage some of these items depending on priority level, and then we'll also look for grant revenues and other revenues that we don't currently have to ensure that we at least have a plan put together to go towards what's needed based on the priorities provided.
Okay. And I'm going to, along those lines, tee up our Public Works Director, only because I want to make sure the answer is coming straight from the source. It's not a matter of, let's just repave it. I believe there's a lot more to it, and if you could elaborate a little bit on that, stuff underneath the surface. It's not just, hey, let's just go out there on an afternoon, pave it over because there's some potholes.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. There's really, I think, though, 3 separate projects when people bring up Pioneer. One is go fix the potholes, which seems to be the one people are responding to the most, just because, in essence, there's no road anymore in some areas. It's just potholes holding up other potholes. Second, there's the Main Street group that approached us that wants to do something to draw people downtown. And so they wanted to do kind of an interim improvement to the road with trees and some artwork and things like that. And then there's we just went through the year and a half of the waterfront visioning, and that area was a big part of the renderings. And so that's the third area, is the redevelopment of that. And as you work on the comp plan, and some of those areas are scheduled for upzones, there's that ultimate redoing of Pioneer. So to me, when we talk to constituents, I follow up now more with finding out which one are they talking about, right? Which one of those 3 things are they focused on? So as far as fixing the potholes for the most southerly lane as you head eastbound, which is the worst, we plan to do some initial pothole fixing. It won't be a beautiful new road, but let's call it pothole fixing this year. Then there is really, we went out and we met with WashDOT regarding Main Street's request. The difficulty is SR 20 and that 5 lanes right there. There's not much we can do for about 300, 400 feet near that intersection, because you can't just take 5 lanes and say, oh, everyone will merge in like 50 feet and we'll do what Main Street Group wants to do, right? So that kind of discouraged Main Street Group appropriately in that a lot of the work would not be right at the highway intersection. It would be very difficult to do that on an interim basis. So that one's kind of off the plate for right now. So the other one is really the redoing of that, and we have more conversation to do that. And so we would typically need to apply for state or federal grants and be successful in getting those grants before we did that redevelopment of that Main Street. Did that help?
It
Knock
did.
down
It
into-
did. The part I like there is talking about the potholes and that we will try to address at least something of that this year.
Yeah,
Not
and then-
redoing the whole road, but at least some of the more inexpensive, quicker.
Yeah, and then the conversation we're having in-house briefly is a fourth alternative, which is do we use our precious arterial money, which is only $500,000 a year, which I know sounds like a lot of money, but as you know, we're guessing that oil prices will be even more expensive this year, right? And so do we want to just fix those potholes so people, it's a little smoother for you? Or do we want to do a complete resurfacing of that, knowing that we've got a redevelopment coming up in the next 5 to 10 years? And so that's something we'll bring to council. We'll work with Sabrina and David to talk about those alternatives. We're kind of leaning that could be
The 500 isn't enough.
like a waste of precious money, and there could be other roads that we want to preserve and leave Pioneer the way it is, and then figure out how we communicate that with Maggie and the mayor.
I think so.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate now I have something to reference people to. So thank
Okay,
you so
yes.
much.
Actually, can I add something really quick? I would like to acknowledge the Public Works team and Stephen and the staff over there, because they're consistently updating the projects page. So all of the questions that the community has, they can find those answers easily on the website because it is constantly being updated. And Alex, our city engineer, and I are working on some outreach for roads things, because that is one of the biggest questions we are getting. So there is some stuff in the works.
And I do think that Steve and Alex are doing a great job in, listening to priorities as well as direction that they're getting from the executive office. They're liking the partnership that we've been having and working together and seeing the more transparent way of going through the budget process that's coming up and how we're approaching this, so that you feel like there's a better sense of direction and where we're going as far as planning. So I just wanted to say that, it's been advantageous that way too. So go ahead, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you, Maggie, and a couple of things. I like the fourth idea, by the way. I'd love to figure out how we could pay and just resurface the whole road for 5 or 10 years. It gets enough that'll make it more attractive instead of just having patchy potholes. It seems like the more advantageous. Can that infrastructure underneath that road be upgraded during that project time as well?
Oh, I love your follow-up question. Now we can really get into road construction, which we should spend 90% of our time talking about.
It's way more than 500,000.
But I'm just one of many in this room.
My heritage built roads early on in the 1900s in Missouri, so yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember, for that very smart and deep question. You're right. The problem with repaving the road is then we go, well, how old is the water line? How old is the sewer line? How old is the stormwater system? And now we've got to, do we really go repave it and not take care of the old water line?
We fix it.
So you know where I'm going. I'll
Yep.
leave it at that. But that's the problem.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, and that has to be done probably when we do the whole thing anyways. So maybe this is a way to get a little bit of a head start and get the community understanding that this is going to be a longer process. And here we fixed your potholes. You got a whole new road. We got to pay for it first. It's not happening yet. My other question was first, to all the staff, thank you for the email invites to events that have been coming. This last year has been a large improvement. Is there a way to preload the quarterly meetings or any of that into the calendars, so that just kind of it's the recommended attendance for us, right? The all staff meetings or any of that, because continually I'm neurodivergent. executive functioning issues sometimes, and so
I will
don't
say
remember it
I
all,
will
so.
say that I think with the city events, I think we can absolutely do that because we control that 100%. But when you're talking about a ribbon cutting or something that involves Main Street or the chamber, we can't always do that because we don't have that much advance notice from them. So as soon as we get those, we're forwarding those on.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, but I don't think that we could do that a quarter in advance. Is all I'm saying.
No.
So-
I was just thinking, like, I would think we know the staff meetings and kind of on a regular time base. So that type of thing. And yeah, we can, I understand that the organizations outside our purview, we can't control. So thank you.
Right. And just to answer that question, Councilmember, at our director's retreat, not that long ago, we did launch a calendar, a citywide calendar that you all will have access to. So I'm still working on populating that based on some of the information that came out of that director's retreat. Last year, at the end of last year, we also conducted, along with the Chamber and Main Street, we conducted a community meeting, which gave us all of the events that were planned for 2026. Unfortunately, at that time, those events weren't set in stone yet, but we are working on creating that calendar with the Chamber and with a young lady from Sherwood Services. So hopefully we will get that up and running fairly soon for you.
And thank you. Again,
course.
we're talking about priorities, and so to kind of go to the council member at the end, this question about what do we mean by, because there are priorities, and both the mayor and administrator have answered the question for us. I'll give you mine. I like the calendar help. The more technology we can integrate into helping us do our job, the better for
Yeah.
everybody all the way around. And I need that help. I'm not as organized as others, and so we do our best to do what we can. And so, again, thank you for the increase of the last. I mean, that's been great.
It was a fun and impressive exercise at the retreat to see the directors, and they actually had 12 months up on all the windows calendars, and then we used Post-it notes to put every department's events in all of the months. And then that's going to be, she's going to make all that electronic, and then everyone's going to have access to it. So that's the entire city in a snapshot. So I thought it was really impressive to see. It also has like our vacations on there that are already planned, and we know. So yeah, yeah. And yes, Councilmember Romero.
I support Councilmember Wigginstein's recommendation with regard to the calendar. So thank you for that. That's all I've got.
Cool. Anything else for Maggie? So I have one more thing for Maggie. These are their priorities, but I am going to suggest one edit.
Yes.
Priority 6, Parks, Maintenance, and Recreation. Goal B, install lighted turf fields, including... I would just leave those, install lighted turf fields, leave it alone. We don't know where those are going to be yet. Yes.
Yeah, I'll make it on record to strike that Fort Nugent.
So,
Okay, done.
I don't want to upset anyone, so.
Okay, noted. Is council okay with me bringing this back in April as an action item?
Councilman, yeah, go ahead, just speak. It's you guys.
I do have one question because I understand, I mean, these are priorities and what may be a priority for one of us may not be for the whole. When it comes to some of these priorities that are more on the back burner, and I'll be specific and I'll say what do we call it these days? The universal playground. Because that was what Parks and Rec was working on, and then it was on grant funding. Does that mean that that gets completely abandoned because it didn't make the top, or does that mean it's on the back burner and if things come up, we'll pursue it?
So it's one of the things that we're talking about in Parks and Recreation is the Parks and Open Spaces Plan. And I probably just said that wrong because I always try to get pros spelled out correctly. Parks and Recreation Open Spaces Plan, that is what is coming up as one of the activities, as well as the work that Maggie's doing for the indoor recreation facility. So all of those conversations are going to lead to where those types of projects would fit into long-term planning. And that is the conversation we're going to be having with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. So we've talked about the fact that they need to look at the list of items that they have on their list, what we currently said was already existing and needed to be addressed, and then prioritize that to bring a recommendation forward to you. So I don't want to say it's dead as much as it's something that the group needs to look at and make sure is prioritized. And then they're going to present a recommendation to you as a council.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Wittgenstein has one more, and then Councilmember Peterson, yeah.
Oh, I had it.
We can come back.
Yep, go ahead.
Councilmember Peterson, go ahead.
I guess I'm confused, Councilmember Stuckey. The second yellow is complete Windjammer Park projects, playground, lagoon, windmill. Would that not be part of the playground you were speaking of?
I guess that's a good question. So the universal playground, which is the term we're using now, when really it was, sensory equipment, things for people of all abilities. I don't know. I assume that was separate, but it might be taking place there, but I don't want to.
So I am meeting with staff tomorrow afternoon to talk about grants that are pending and what our applications are going to be going forward. So I can revisit that with you, and you'll see it on the application chart. But again, we are planning to talk to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission about their priorities and what we have funded and what we're going to move forward and what will be future grant applications. So that is part of the conversation.
So for those of us from Rio Linda, then what playground are you talking about?
I know there is a playground there as well that was older. I don't know exact time reference at this point. So that is a conversation for the commission to provide a recommendation on. And I will talk to Parks and Rec staff about that as well.
Yes, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
I got it. I wrote it down. So we do all this, and I'm going to simplify it because some of us need it that way. We do all the priorities in order to help with the budgeting process for the next 2-year cycle in 27, 28.
Yep.
These priorities then should, in my opinion, would lead the advisory committees.
Oh.
So their priorities.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that.
So it's like two things, right?
Yeah.
There's current priorities that they're currently working on that are still in the 25, 26.
Correct, yeah.
And then their conversations, should also be including these. So this will, help. I've listened to a couple of meetings recently, and they're looking for things to do in some of those advisory committees. So, good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Question.
So I had a note to follow up and say, I've already met with 2 this week. I have one tomorrow night with the Arts Commission. As promised, I'm meeting with all of them this month to lay out roles, responsibilities, and then I'm also talking about priorities and then how we're going forward, budget process and that kind of thing. And then I think we're also scheduling a few, where needed, if wanted, one-on-one meetings with the chair folks of the different committees to have further discussion, so if they want that. So, yeah. All good? All right, thank you, Maggie. I think we got one more item and then we are free. So,
Okay, thank you.
last item is ICOM, Island County Emergency Services Communication Center lease. And here to introduce that topic is our Deputy City Administrator and Finance Director, David Goldman. This is,
The city currently leases a structure across the street next to the police headquarters. It's next to that tower.
Your mic on?
Sorry about that.
there you go.
So for the folks at home, ICOM currently leases a structure that's across the street from City Hall and right next to the police station, next to that large communication tower that's very apparent when you're driving down Barrington. The initial lease with ICOM started back in 2016, and it lasted about 5 years, and it was renewed at the end of 2020, and it lasted another 5 years, and it expired on December 31st, 2025. The police chief and ICOM have been negotiating on a lease continuance. So I'm just going to turn around. I'm good. So here's some of the background between what's currently in the lease, what is in the ICOM proposal. and also what's in the city proposal that we're looking at putting together with your input today. So the lease length, we're considering keeping it at the 5 years, but with our proposal, we would put an auto renewal on that. So it would auto renewal for 1 year. So it gives us some time to renegotiate a continuance on the lease if that's what both parties choose. The amount per square foot recently increased to 93 cents per square foot. ICOM is proposing 94 cents per square foot. That was a recent proposal from their board meeting a few weeks ago. So our proposal would be to keep the 93 cents through June because the city did provide a notification back in September to ICOM that would be the rate for 2026. But then we would change the terms of the lease, change the amount of the lease to $1.29 per square foot for the remainder of 2026. So that would be the second half of 2026. And I have a few slides on how that number came about coming up. So the inflation factor that translates into those numbers for the current lease is 2.7% because that was taken back in September of last year. ICOM proposal was 3.1%. That's the latest inflation factor. And the city proposal will just keep with our notification for the first half of 2026 at 2.7%. And the inflation factor is pretty much the same thing. It's the Seattle 12-month trailing CPI-U, which is Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers on a 12-month trailing basis. Our proposal, though, is to tag it with the October CPI. That's due to the fact that the October CPI comes out in November, and we can have an understanding of what the next increase will be starting in January of every year. If we wait until the December CPI, that doesn't come out until after January 1st is passed. So there's no way to have it start at the beginning of the year. So the October one makes the most sense here. So as far as rent increase caps go, there is no current rent increase cap. It just goes straight per CPI. The ICOM proposal from their board was to cap it at 3.1% for the 5 years. And we're saying that it can float with CPI, but we'll bound it. So we'll have a cap of 5%, and we'll have a base of 2% because, cost of maintenance and so on, and, just to maintain the parking lot and everything that goes up, by amount every year. So 2 to 5% bounded. So currently, there's a September 1st rent increase notification date. ICOM, the proposal is not changing that. And what we're saying is that we can make, because the CPI doesn't get published until November, we can have an optional rent increase notification date of December 1st. And the only reason I say we should have it optional is because this lease has some certainty to it. The CPI is public information. You can just pull it down when it gets published, as long as there's not a government shutdown, which happened a few months ago and it wasn't published. But as long as that's published, the person who's paying the lease can pull it down, do the calculations, and know what the increase is going to be. Also, if we keep it optional, if for some reason the December 1st notification deadline is inadvertently missed, it could cause a dispute as to saying, that maybe we don't have to pay that increase, even though the contract says so. So to avoid that dispute, I say just make it optional. And then as far as termination goes, in the current contract, it says in the event of default and/or breach of terms, that leads to a termination. There's waiting periods and days and cure notices and all that. With the ICOM proposal that the board put together, it says it can be terminated by ICOM with a 120-day notice. Our proposal is saying we'll keep the 120-day notice, but it'll also be for both parties. The city or ICOM has the right to cancel it.
David, can you go back, please, one? My notes say, and I could have this wrong, but that bounded between, I thought between the meeting that you, myself, Sabrina, and Deputy Chief had, I have 3 to 5%, not 2 to 5%.
Oh, well, I put it down to 2.
Why?
Only because you see that inflation factor, the current inflation factor,
I don't care.
2.7. Oh, well, we keep it at 3. That's fine.
That's fine, yeah, 3, yeah.
All right, 3 to 5%. All
Yeah.
right. So here's part of the reason why we did this this rent adjustment. So currently, it's at 93 cents. We went ahead and looked at some of the data that was out there and what commercial property that has over 1,000 square foot of space. There's a lot of smaller ones. We didn't really want to use that because the space we have is 4,200 square feet. So we looked at everything over 1,000 square feet. We looked at what was actually rented out and what's available on the market today. The stuff that was rented out is mostly in 2025, so it's a little dated. But the stuff that's available now is, it's available now. That's the current going rate. And we got a weighted average of $1.65. So the thought was we just, meet in the middle at $1.29 for the proposed rate. So that just basically splits the difference. And then here's how much revenue that would generate. So by modernizing the lease and alignment to that, splitting the difference, it would go to about $56,000 a year, about a 22% increase over the 2005 amount. So that's pretty much kind of what we put our calculations together. And you see there's 2017. So I know it doesn't show all the years between 2017 and 24 just because of space things. But basically, if you look on the chart that's in the backup, that's in the actual agenda packet, you can see that it has increased between 0 and 9% per year over that time period. And with that, we are available to hear your feedback and make adjustments if necessary. And then we'll communicate with ICOM about it, and then we'll bring back something to City Council for approval and deliberation at a later date.
Questions, comments from council? Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, staff and David. Is ICOM asking for any tenant improvements at this time?
The only thing that is on the improvement list is the emergency generator, and that is already budgeted by the, Sandra has already budgeted that as equipment rental replacement with the police department. So they're going to replace the police department's emergency generator and ICOM's at the same time. There's already $75,000 that's in that fund, and it's been an ongoing process of getting that generator purchased and identified. So.
I'm having just a tiny bit of trouble hearing you. Did you say there's over $75,000 or only?
No, there's over $75,000 in that fund already for that replacement. That it's not going to cost that much, but with installation and everything. But, yeah.
Councilmember Stuckey.
Who pays utilities?
They do.
They do? Is Triple N?
Yes.
Where is I can't foresee this going sideways and them saying, "Hey, we're out." But let's assume they did. They can't just take their office and just put it somewhere. It's not a matter of just, "Hey, let's move the phones and computers." Like, there's much more to this, correct?
Correct. There's it's a purpose-built facility for dispatch. It's because there wasn't funding streams outside of user funds in the past. We, as a city, decided to not increase their rent. That's changed now that they've got the 2/10 sales tax percentage that they'll start receiving in April.
And you kind of teed me up for where I was going to go with that 2/10. I still remember listening to the presentation. I still remember, the possibility that this could go back to the municipalities and things like in a certain way. Is there any talk of that, or is it still, hey, we're collecting the money, we don't know what it's going to look like?
They're not decreasing fees.
No,
I guess that's my question. Yes, I mean typically places don't decrease fees.
The board voted to not decrease the fees for this year. However, there is a full study going on right now on how to spend the fees. And
they're not going to decrease fees.
All of that.
I kind of tend to agree that they're I mean, if they said yes, we're going to decrease our fees, I'd probably be a lot more likely to play a little more ball. But if they're not going to decrease their fees, we're still giving them a decent deal. And I think as a city, we have a habit of giving good deals. I look at the yacht club.
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying, I think that this increase is absolutely warranted. I like that it's being anchored with something, so it's not just, hey, this is what we feel like. I see no reason why not to go with the city's proposal, and it's not like we're being unreasonable and saying, hey, where else are you going to go? I think we're being very reasonable, and I think this increase is warranted, and I would say I am all for it.
I can tell you at the board meeting, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, there's no intention of moving. They may have like a 10-year plan, but like in the next, not for 10 years. We're definitely increasing, but we're still far behind what the market rate is. So they're still getting a very sweet deal. It's not near the deal that the yacht club's getting, but they're getting an increase. And and I made them aware of that there was going to be discussion about that. I would look at whatever they were paying and look at the market, and we would decide. But so I was very candid. I think we have a meeting next week to discuss this. I think we're having a special meeting next week or a week after next. So I don't know. I have so many
It's on
meetings coming up.
Thursday.
Sorry. Anyway, it's coming up, and we're going to discuss this. I don't anticipate any pushback. I really don't. So again, we're not breaking the bank here. So any other? Yes, Councilman Romero.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, I'm strongly in favor of establishing the costs that we charge, or based on reliable, relevant data and information that reflects reality, and not what special pressure groups want, not to mention the yacht club by name.
Yeah, no, I mean, they weren't even they didn't come into this thought process at all. We looked at index data. I want to go with 3 to 5 because I think overall that's going to eventually bring us in line with a market rate, because by the time that they're ready to vacate that building, the city can then be in a position to re-rent to somebody else and be in a stronger position to budget for replacement cost. So, yeah. Anything else? All right, that's it then. Thanks so much. All right, well, that is the last thing on the agenda. So I did not ask you guys if you had anything. Does any of you guys have anything you want to report out on before we adjourn? Nothing? Okay, well, then that's 3:13.